All right, so hopefully you now understand point of intersection. The idea being the more data that we get helps us to create a better statistical understanding, okay? It is understood that as we grow as humans, as our experiences on this earth, whether with science, with one another, information and, things change. That's good. That's growth. That means the more data that we get, the more that we can make generalizations. And so, yes, maybe some of the science we have right now, while we think it is based on everything we have, it is true as it stands. And that is where we come up with our thoughts on it. Sometimes we still need more information, whether that's more research, more experience, maybe new science comes in and changes how we see things. We think about when there was a time when the medical community would use leeches, and that at the time was, or perceived medical thing. I don't know if they considered a miracle, but oh wow, look, leeches will do this thing for us. And then over time they go, oh, maybe not. That's okay. We're learning, and that is just human nature. Okay, so do keep that in mind when we talk about, not all things are 100%, despite how much research. And if you stood on the ground right now, based on my information, this is true to the core. That is something to know. We talk about most A's are B. If you happen upon an A, it's most likely going to be a B, although there are exceptions. That is important to understand as we move forward. This is where critical thinking comes from, because you have to be open to understand that there are outside circumstances that might change the way in which you look at a thing. Okay, so always be open. That is critical thinking. All that data that you get, all that information, be open to understand that there might be things around it that might change your final generalization. Okay, let's move forward. Understanding your evidence and your generalization from it. Usually, the reason why you're trying to get evidence and come up with a generalization is because you have a question. And that question is the characteristic of interest. Okay, so the characteristic of interest is, what do I want to find out? What do I want to find out? Okay, so the characteristic of interest isn't like, a characteristic of myself. That has nothing to do with characteristic of interest. It has to do, what do you want to find out? Okay, so characteristic of interest is you're trying to find out something about people. And that people is a certain target audience. And the target audience is whom you want to know about. Okay, so target population, notice it's an umbrella. At the umbrella, the target population is all the people you are trying to find out about. Okay, so we're going to use an example as Butte College is your target population. You have to recognize, though, that the target population of Butte includes Glenn Center, the Oroville Center, and the Chico Center. It's all of Butte, and online, right? So when you think of the target population of Butte College, you have to think about every single person within Butte College would be your target population, okay? So when you're thinking about your characteristic of interest and what you want to find out, it is very important that you understand whom in which you want to find out. And you have to include all peoples. Think of all of the target population. So if you're thinking of a research project in which you use something for young women between the ages of 15 and 32, you have to account for all women ages, 18 to 32, and, all peoples, right? Like, where in the United States does this account for? Okay, that would be your target population. In our instance, Butte College. We're going to do Butte College as our target population. All right. So now that we have a group that we are, wishing to generalize, right? We're trying to find a statistic generalization of a target population. We need to get evidence. All right. So we need to start getting some evidence. Oh, actually, I'm lying. Back up. We're not there yet. Actually, yeah, we need to get some evidence, but we need to figure out who of the target audience are we going to try, or the target population, are we going to try and get information from? How do we do that? I mean, Glenn, Chico, online, that's so many people, so now I have to survey everybody? You don't. All you need to do when you are looking up a target audience is all you need is a sample. That's easy, right? Just a sample. All right, we have a sample of the target population. But the problem with getting a sample of the target population is you need to make sure it is not biased. We'll talk about that in a second. So in order to avoid bias in a sample of your target population, you need to be random. And random is exactly as you'd think when it comes to sample. But with random, it has to be a condition in which every single person in that target population, every single student at Butte, needs to be available and be given an equal opportunity to be a part of the statistical evidence, right? Like the people we're surveying. So the statistical evidence would be a survey that we are going to do for the target population. Well, there's too many students at Butte and too much data. It wouldn't make sense. So we just need to get a sample. But when we get a sample, we have to make sure that it is as random as possible so that everybody has an equal chance of being a part of this. And that's hard when you're working with students who are online and in person, right? And that's when you would come through and you would try and figure out a way of, figuring out a survey that would make sure everybody gets a chance equally. That's your ultimate goal, okay? Now the problem is, what might happen is, say my target population that I'm gonna do, my characteristic of where is it? Where's my little card? Characteristic of interest. Oh. Anyway, so the characteristic of interest I have for my target population is I want to know who out there, so let's do this. Who chews gum at Butte College? Who chews gum? Not everybody does, but I want to find out who chews gum. Who chews gum? Okay, so here our target population is at Butte College. Who chews gum? In order to do that, I need to find a sample of students. And I'm like, because I can't do all of Butte. That's too much. If I got every single person involved, that would be so much data, it'd be too much data, right? It really would be not worth the effort. This is why we do random. Because when you do random, you don't have to get as big of a sample, right? You can do a smaller sample when you do random because you have given everyone a chance, and because it's random, you're still getting the same people within the target population, but you don't have to do so many. It's kind of like when people do voting and they don't do every single human being in the United States. The actual science behind it is up to about 1,000 people. If you do a random sample of 1,000 people who vote in the United States, you're going to get the same exact information as if you did 2,000 or 3,000 or 5,000. It turns out about 1,000 people ends up being random enough to keep giving you the same exact information for your target population. So just a little note. If you see numbers and you're like, why is that so small? Because they recognize in the random sample, all they need is 1,000 people to keep coming up with the same statistics as they would get throughout. They continue to get the same statistical evidence, okay? All right, hopefully I haven't confused you too much. So here at Butte College, I need to figure out how many people chew gum, and so I need to get my random sample. So my random sample has to include everyone, whether they are online, Chico, or Orville, or the Glenn Center, all the peoples, okay? So I have to figure out a way to do that, to make sure it is as random as possible, okay? And again, that's hard when you have people online. Another issue which creates bias. So bias happens when you are trying to get a random sample of a target population, but you're only going for a few people. It's kind of like when people do phone calls and phone surveys, it's biased because it's only the kind of people who'd be willing to answer the phone to answer questions, right? And unfortunately, that's just how it happens. When you do a poll or a survey, it's pretty much only the times when people are willing to do that. This is why exit surveys are important, because you do have the target population of those who actually voted, so it's not going to be as biased. But anyway, just keep in mind that, so bias in our gum survey, if I only survey my class, my online class, do you think that is a true random sample of the whole target population at Butte? If all I'm sampling is my class online? Do you think that actually helps give us a voice for all the peoples in our target population at Butte College? No. No, that's not going to happen. And the reason why is because it's only you all, and you might have your own biases, and your own biases might have to do with the fact that you're online. I don't know how chewing gum and being online would be it would have any whatevers, but there might be the case why that is. Maybe you don't chew gum because you're online and you don't care about, how your breath smells when you're just sitting in front of a computer, versus those who might be in person who have, oh, I just had lunch, I gotta have some gum, or maybe they get nervous in person and chew gum, right? There's a lot of things that go behind why someone might have gum, or maybe they can't smoke at home and they've got nicotine gum, right? So recognize why it's important that we do such a random sample versus a bias sample of very small few people. So those of you who are in my online class, it would be biased if I'm only using you as my survey. Random would be, I get everyone, I get anybody here on campus would get a chance, anyone at the Chico Center, the Glenn Center, anyone online, every single person has an opportunity to be a part of this. That's how I know this is going to be a good survey. And I don't just choose people at the Chico Center, or only at Orville, or Glenn, or only online, or only in person, right? So you have to make sure you get as many people as possible who could be a part of this in order for it to be a true answer to our characteristic of interest. So what we've done then is, now that I've gone through my target population, figured out my random sample, and I got as much statistical evidence as I possibly could. I don't know if y'all can see my notes here. Now we want to make sure we do a statistical generalization. And that comes from taking all of that data and all of that information and coming to your final say. Now, the thing you want to do is, let's simplify this. Let's do my characteristic of interest is what I want to find out. Characteristic of interest is what I want to find out. Target population is who do I want to know about? Okay. Next, when we get my sample is whom I can study to get answers about my entire target population. Okay, so that's what a sample is. The sample is for whom you can study in order to get an accurate answer from your entire target population. Okay, that's why the sample is so important, and that's why it being random is so important, because who do you want to get all your information from, right? Because you have to have that equal chance throughout everyone, but you have to have your whole target audience. Again, all of us underneath this umbrella. I hope this is making sense. Okay, anyway, that is pretty much as simple as I can get for it. Please take a look at the notes. One thing I want you to think of is, when we talk about statistical evidence, or statistics, where do we get, when do we use these statistics? You saw just now in a survey that I did, but think about politics. Politics, we talked about that too, where people who are doing exit interviews, or how much someone is more likely to vote on this or that, because it matters, right? It very much matters. So people use that information to come up with their, either their platforms or, gerrymandering, or whatever the point is. We do it in sports. We do it whether for an individual or a team. We do it for healthcare issues. Oftentimes, statistical evidence for sure when it comes to healthcare information. And we talk about for advertising. We're going to talk about advertising just a little bit. Advertising about who would, potentially buy something or not buy something, or what that looks like. We think about it for business and profit analysis. Statistical evidence is very important. People use this all the time because they need a generalization because they want to make money. It all comes down to the money, let's be honest. So anyway, also lastly, please note, this statistical evidence, this random sample of your target population, all of this, it doesn't prove anything. There's no actual proving of anything, but what it does do is it supports the information, all right? All your evidence supports your generalization. That's the goal here. Again, when we talked about before, when we talked about point of intersection, right? All we're doing is we're just trying to suggest or support or, again, we're just giving you a generalization, as much data as we possibly can. This is why when people go, oh, well, data, science didn't prove blah, blah. We're not here to prove. We're here to show you, based on this statistical evidence, based on everything we've gathered in this very moment to the best of our abilities, this is what we've come up with. But again, as you saw, as we go on as humans, as we develop more science, as more things come to light, as we're able to see more of how our brain works and our body works, how the humanity works, especially as, things change dramatically, we can only suggest or we can only offer support for our generalizations, but we cannot prove. All right, so just keep that in mind as we are working with statistics and trying to support our findings. So again, when we're doing any kind of research, you're not proving as much as you are supporting your characteristic of interest. Okay, so hopefully all my hard work on these signs was worth this 15-minute lecture to get you to understand exactly what we're looking for as you go work for it on the KCA. So good luck and have fun out there, guys.